Zuck the cuck drinks water like a duck, but he also drinks your data. So tell him and Google to shove your data up their schwing-schwangs by downloading the Brave browser. It's free, blocks online advertising, and protects your privacy and data from evil tech companies. You only see ads if you want to see them, and you get cryptocurrency for your attention. Don't let Zuck use you to make a buck. Download Brave by clicking on the link down below.
Howdy, lieutenants and economists.
The most volatile, evil, disgusting things on the planet, humans. If you have a video request, you can always go to assholeconsulting.com.
Yeah, I am gonna charge you, kids.
And that is the importance of not fucking up.
You are such an asshole!
Josh writes, this may be a bit too academic for your format, but I was wondering if you could offer some speculation on how the economy and society will be affected by the millennials, particularly the men not marrying and having kids. As I have observed that confirmed bachelors just don't earn as much money because they don't need to spend much money. Yeah, 100% right. It's about a third. A man can get maybe even a quarter, I think it was. And if you're a minimalist, it's certainly a tenth. I mean, a true minimalist could get by in a tenth of what it costs to raise a family. Once you don't have wifey poo there and little rugrats, a man is like the single most efficient economic unit on the planet. If you're not going to dude bro it up and get a used Beamer on a lease that you can't afford. I understand that this is touching close to a few of your books, but a brief guess on how few men are going to become economically useful to the system, and what that means all the way out to the macroeconomic and perhaps even geopolitical level would be fascinating. Got you covered. You could also bring up how an even larger share of our electorate is going to be comprised of single mothers. Let me know what fee you think is reasonable. So, all right, I sat down and you are right. This trend not only is going to happen into the future, but it has been happening. Although for some other reasons, men's labor force participation rate peaked roughly in the 60s and has been going down ever since. A lot of that is just human nature. We can make just as much money with less work. Why work? We don't. Laziness is inherent to human survival in the past. You need to expend your calories of energy wisely to catch that antelope, not just piss it away. So there's just men you want to be lazy. But we could go back to the boomers when they set up the divorce Olympics of the 1970s. That immediately destroyed and disconnected the incentive, or at least hugely disincentivized men. I'm like, whoa, what's a baby boomer male's name? What would it? Not Anthony. What's a really good? Fred? Fred. God, there's Fred and Charlie, and what's another boomer name for a guy? Opie. Fred, Opie, and Charlie. Or no. Yeah, Fred, Opie, and Charlie. Whatever. They're all like, did you see what happened to Fred? Jesus, I'm not going to. And then as that disconnect, because men can make so little money and survive, as you feel like, well, I can get by on 30 hours a week. I don't need that car. I don't need this. I don't need that. That started it and accelerated the decline in men. And there's even a study out now. It's on marginal revolution. I linked to it on my blog, CaptainCapitalism.blogspot.com. Didn't read through it, but the takeaway was two things. One was, your request is opportunely timed. One was the divorce court hugely disincentivized men. I forgot what the second incentive was, but yeah, you take away women and children, wife and kids, men don't need it. And if you make it punishing to the point you go to jail, even if you can't work up the money, that's a huge disincentive, because now you're directly threatening a man's ability to survive. And we could say, well, you should love your wife and kids. Yeah, but if you can't even support yourself, I mean, you're number one. You got to support yourself, otherwise you're worthless to the rest of the world. And so a lot of men are like, whoa, let's just jump. We go from the two lower echelons of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: safety and food, clothing, shelter. And then we skip love and societal acceptance, and we just go right to self-actualization, because there's a big great white shark in there called divorce and reeing a feminist woman, divorce, take half alimony. Yeah, maybe I make my money, I pay off my student loans, get a nice little bachelor pad, and then I just sit there and I read my books and I play my video games. And now it's not like divorce is new. You could see Fred, Charlie, and Opie getting blindsided by divorce. They didn't know that was coming. But now we have boomers, zoomers, X, and millennials either getting divorced themselves or definitely witnessing divorce of their old man. Where's Dad? This is this pile of ash that's all that's left of him. And Mom's still beating him up for more money. Even though you boys may have loved your mother, you're still like, and if your dad was a dumbass and got married again, then divorced again, you're like, well, I mean, you have seen the quarterback get sacked multiple times. You will have seen multiple train wrecks. So you'd be like, I ain't getting on no fucking train. And so you have seen this decrease in male participation. Divorce not being the only thing. We've given a lot of welfare away. We pay you not to work. There's other things going on. And especially more pronounced in the millennials, not only do you have divorce as a great disincentive, and the suffering as children, as you've been brought up in divorced families, you're like, I'm never getting married, and government programs, but we have also coddled the millennials, either through government parental money or both, and they're just not men. They're not growing up to be men. They're not even able to support themselves. We keep them a perpetual adolescence into their 20s. And so they're just not going to, and here's financial reason, both men and women, when you load them up with a ton of debt for a worthless fucking degree, they're not, if they're financially wise, or they at least have a financial moral compass, they're going to postpone marriage because they can't afford a kid, and they probably can't afford to get married. A handful of the people do. Most other people, I deserve. It's all me. All right, so I did go through a little bit more of an organized thing here to zero in on what kind of effect the decrease in millennial male labor force participation in the economy is going to have an effect, and why, and the underlying dynamics and what's going on. All right, so there are two main things that have given men an incentive to get married and be economic producers. All right, and it is almost all of economic. You go look outside. Everything that is not nature, like the clouds or the grass or the trees, and you can even say the agriculture, that's male influenced. About the only thing that men have not created, innovated, or produced is like that tornado going by, destroying male productivity, of which we'll rebuild, motherfucker. I'm gonna knock it out. We're gonna build it back up, asshole tornado. And yes, women have contributed to that increasingly more in the past, but the vast majority of what you see in terms of economic production, the entire world, has been created off of the labor and the intelligence and the innovation of men. It is to be seen if women are going to contribute in equal amounts now that they're finally free, because we've been keeping them chained in a basement all this time, apparently so. But we are the engines of economic growth. Now, the fuel that we run on is female beauty, sex, testosterone. Some people would say that it is to guarantee that our progeny, our children, our genes go forth into it. I'm sure there's a bit of truth to that. It's just like, damn, I want to fuck that. That's basically it. We are incentivized, we are fueled. The term muse comes from the fact there's a female who's beautiful, we have chemistry, and she inspires us to produce. And it's true. You get a girl. They even hired, Chinese ain't no dopes. The Chinese, one company, they got their coders and they're working. And I think they increased it like double or triple. Don't quote me. But a significant percentage was profitable. They just hired cute Chinese girls, not little girls, they're young women, to come in and be nice. That's what they did. They were just fucking nice to these guys. How you doing? They would get them coffee, and they wouldn't flirt. They wouldn't detract too much from the guy's work, but just putting a couple, not even, they were pleasantly dressed. They weren't sexy, they weren't slutty, they weren't lusty. They were just nice. They had decorum, they were feminine. And oh my God, production went through the roof. I wonder why, doobie dabby. And so that it's true. You want production, you want civilization, you got to give men a reason, you got to give them women. And because if there wasn't women, it is 100% true. Many comedians have said, if there weren't women around, us men would be living in grass huts. We would just be still clobbering each other over the head with mallets, because I might want your meat. Who knows, maybe we wouldn't even be clobbering each other over with mallets. We'd just be like, hey, we work together. Maybe communism is possible with just men. Like, if we work together, we get all those antelope over there a lot more efficiently. We grow fat and happy. You're right, Mog. Hey, in like 2 million years, hey, Thog. Yes, Mog. In 2 million years, should we start giving each other our children's baby boomer names like Charlie and Fred? Yeah, let's do that. But Mog and Thog will work for now. Okay. In any case, if without women, men we wouldn't. And you can see that happening. You can see that happening with millennials. You can see it happening with Gen X. You can see it in birth rates, where men are just like, fuck this. What is it? March Madness. Men now all go get their vasectomies. You're like, oh, I've had enough. We're done now. And you can see it, and as much as the social scientists, the frauds that they are, like, oh my God, did you know that people are getting married later and later and having less kids? Why is that? Well, you see, I was like, no, men still control whether or not we propose. We still control that. Like, why are people not cohabitating? Oh, feminism says, I don't want my dick stuck in the penis sharpener or shredder. Like my dad got his, 3 or 4 times. I don't, no, we're not going to cohabitate. No, we're not having common marriage. Nope. So that's one thing, is the fuel has been taken away. And you see this before I go on to the second one. Not only is it the fear of seeing divorce in your old men, but the female beauty, you can't just be female, you have to be beautiful. You have to be pretty. You guys have all had it. I will tell you a story. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. Now. There was a bar over in St. Paul, right off 280. No longer there. The waitress had the sister. I'd go there frequently, have a cocktail. This is way back in the day. And I was 24, 25, maybe 26, I can't remember. Mid-20s. And in comes this pixie redhead. And she was on a bike, like pedal bike, and I was still biking around. I'm like, and time slowed down, and the birds chirped, even though it was winter, and I was like, wow. And I had chemistry. Oh, I have got to. And then we talked, and I'm like, I have got to talk to this girl. I have got to ask her out. Now, of course, she was, that's all she had. When you get older, you'll realize that's just looks. I think she was borderline poverty. She was dating this loser, didn't have a car. And in Minnesota, that's a bad sign. And it didn't work out because I had property and I was responsible and I had a job and I was a ballroom dance instructor and all this other cool shit. And apparently I should have just been a heroin addict with also a bike and nothing else to my name. That's who she went out with. So, that fuel, it was like you got a steroid shot or a booster shot. Like, whoa, let's go. Popeye taking his spinach. That is no longer the case. And I've seen it, and especially you boys out there, you're sending me like these online dating profiles. You're like, Cappy, no, it is this bad. I'm like, no, that can't be it. Single mom of 4, 3 fathers. If you can't handle me at my best, you don't deserve me at my word. Well then, my children come first, and my kid, and they're gross and fat. You're like, you're kidding. No, this can't. And that's standard. You go out there are some beautiful women, but I think they're only on the internet now. You go to Walmart, you're like, what the fuck? Why is everyone fat? I went to the IHOP, Fort Collins, Colorado, which is a college town. CSU is there. Walked in. There's a table of college girls. And I couldn't keep my eyes off of them, not because they were hot, but complete opposite. These women were in their 20s. They should have all been hot. And they were all overweight by at least 15 to 20 pounds. You're like, what the fuck do millennial boys, or I guess Gen Z boys, have to fight for now? Beautiful women are so rare now, even younger, that men have no incentive. None. And then when they mutilate their bodies with inordinate amounts of tattoos or Skrillex haircuts or piercings or ear gauges or whatever, men have no reason to get up in the morning, no reason to go to war, none. And so without that fuel, it's perfectly understandable that men are not inspired. They don't have a muse. There's no generational muse within the millennial generation or the Gen Z. So I can understand where men are just, it doesn't excuse the behavior, but I can totally see where men go neither they become basement dwellers and they just jerk off to porn and read their comic books. I can't really blame them. It's a logical decision. It's a logical course of action. And those are the types that don't get married. They don't produce money and stuff like that. The other thing is revisiting is the divorce court, where they've seen their fathers get destroyed. They've seen their buddies get destroyed. If you're a Z or a millennial, you've seen your older brother, your Gen Xer brother get destroyed. Everybody, I mean, divorce went down a little bit more than a little bit. But it's still there. It's very common. It was so common among my generation that I'm like, I don't buy wedding gifts anymore because I've been with people who've been married 2 or 3 times. I'm like, fuck you. You get a 10-year anniversary gift when you actually pass that. I had one person, didn't you get it as a gift? I'm like, no. Dipshit, you've been married and divorced twice. When you make it 10 years with this guy, then I'll get you a gift. And it's no secret now that the divorce courts just totally rule in favor of women. And the payout is no secret either. How much do you pay, Bob? We gotta get Gen X and Millennial. How much do you pay, Tristan? How much do you pay, what's a Gen X name? We kind of had common names. Matthew? What was it? Gretchen? What did you pay? Well, Gretchen didn't pay. Gretchen got paid. And then when you throw on the fact that government's been getting bigger, economic growth has been slowing, and there's not as much economic opportunity for men, except for, God, I don't know what the hell happened during this quote-unquote Trump economy. I don't contribute it all to him. But it was a tough going from the 90s. So those 20 years was a tough go during those times. So if you're already having a hard time just getting a job and then fighting your way out of student loan debt, and then you see your buddies and your dad and everyone just getting destroyed by divorce, and you hear, $1,000 a month in child support? That would be half my income, and that's a huge disincentive. Now so those are the two main things. One, you have no incentive, no reason, no biological drive, no spinach for Popeye, no fuel in the tank, because the women are just physically uninspiring. Then you have a huge penalty that everyone is acutely aware of with divorce, that they have experienced up close and personal, either through a friend, themselves as a child when the parents got divorced, and they see the payouts. All within the context of a generally slowing economy and not as great economic opportunities. Now, there are other factors as well that are contributing to millennial men and Gen Z boys, you say even Gen X guys, beyond those two things. One, there is a substitute for women, and that is porn. You can argue, it's bad, you shouldn't look at porn, it's a vice, That's all true, but it doesn't change the fact that it's there. It is a substitute. A lot of the reason rape statistics have plummeted is because porn is now readily available, and instead of going out there and grabbing a gal, club her over the head and dragging her back to the cave, let alone getting in fights, men are just jerking off to porn. It's there, it's available. Back in the 80s, there was, I remember, it was almost like money. If you got a Playboy, what you would do is you'd cut up, and you could sell off the pieces of the individual girls almost like it was currency. Eerily so. I mean, paper money is what you're really doing. So now that is free and very commonplace, men, instead of going out to nightclubs, oh God, like fucking World War II vets throwing themselves on Omaha Beach, we Gen Zers, we go throw ourselves into the nightclubs. Just getting slaughtered. I mean, the environment was horrible. Loud, blaring music. You got to yell at the girl. Girls all in there in a little fucking herd. You got to peel one off like a weak gazelle. Oh, maybe I'll get that one. It's straggling. Buying them drinks. Oh, it was a brutal environment. Brutal. I mean, fortunately as a man, but it was just and then it's kind of like, well, why am I going to go through that frankly unacceptable environment and pay all this money and maybe get a number only to be stood up later? You know, and you're just like, oh, there's this porn shit. You rub one out, I'm like, I think I'm going to stay in and play video games. All the fuel's gone. The testosterone's gone. You're calmed down. You're relaxed. And, you know, it's easier that way. It's a lot easier. Oh, you didn't get laid, but chances were you weren't anyway. So, yeah, rub one out. And then you go out. And so there's that huge distance. There's I wouldn't say a total substitute for women, but certainly a substitute for sex, and a quasi or significant enough substitute for women. So again, now further disconnecting and removing men from their muse, from their fuel, from their incentive. They don't have that. It less incentive to actually go and work. We are also enablers. Society is an enabler. Both parents and the government, where we just can't wait to make sure nobody grows up and actually supports themselves. You have government money flooding the market, making sure that little boys and girls, or full-grown adult men and women, don't ever have to work. We perpetually extend adolescence so that you don't, you're 26, you can be on your parents' health insurance until you're 26. You never leave the real world. You never leave college for the real world until you're 25. And then when you get there, you're still out there with a white-collar panhandler begging for government grant money and this and that. The real people end up going and working real jobs, and I know I pick on baristas and security guards and waiters and waitresses, but those are legit jobs. Those are the real men and women because they're actually working. They've left the campus. But then your parents will constantly bail you out, and you never push the kid out of the nest and make sure that the kid flies and becomes an actual full-grown adult bird. It's just they're mentally stunted, they're mentally retarded in terms of their development towards becoming real men. And if they can't even support themselves, they're not going to change. And they're also going to be physically unappealing themselves. Another thing to point out to all of this is, well, if I don't have an incentive to work, I don't have an incentive, I'm not starving, I'm not hungry, I'm not in poverty, it doesn't fire up your engines to go and do something in your life, which directly and indirectly causes you to become a masculine man. Not only making money, but physically. If everything's bought and taken care of, and you see them, they're soft soy boys. You just look at them and you could push them over. Because they've never been hungry. They've never had to struggle or strive or claw. And so that directly has an effect on their testosterone. You look at the try guys, I guarantee none of them were, sleeping in basements and scrimping by and having to work late night shifts. It was just kind of like, hey, I don't like that. So you have weak, effeminate men, which then contributes to the downward spiral. Women don't want to date them. Women have no incentive to look pretty themselves. Why would you gusset yourself up for what the millennial men have become? I understand that. So it feeds on itself. But a lot of that is because we're enablers. So there's a socialism that occurs where you just from womb to tomb. You never, a star needs enough mass that it collapses and it crushes and you have a fusion and it then poof turns into a star. It transitions into a star. There's not that pressure that poof, now you have a man. Where you take a boy, you put enough pressure and responsibility on him, and then he metamorphosizes into a responsible adult male. We don't put any pressure on. We constantly shield young men and boys today from having any pressure, and they never metamorphosize into men. So that's the thing. And then another huge factor, I know we talked about the two main ones, but this is no less. When you tell boys all their life they're not needed and women don't need them, they'll listen. Men are literal. I know women, you could tell them 1 + 1 = 2. And they'll find a reason to make it 3. Men are very literal. This is where women, give you an example where women just do not listen to words. They want to believe in something, and that's what they're going to believe in because society will indulge them. If you want to close the wage gap, stop majoring in stupid shit, and no, you can't have kids. Work as much as men, don't major in stupid shit, you'll have the same success. They don't want to hear that. Do I want sexism? No. No. But they don't hear. They don't want to hear empirical logic or words have meaning. When you tell men something, we will be here at 6 o'clock. Well, some men will listen to that. Okay, we're there at 6 o'clock. Girls, 7:45. Excuse us. What? Men, if you want women, you have to do X, Y. You need to be sensitive, 90s. Okay, I'll be sensitive. I'll write poetry. They'll do it. You tell them, they'll do it. They hear words. Words have meaning in male words, in male world. Then when you tell them women don't need you, and some more extreme sects of feminism is you are toxic and you should feel shame and you have privilege. Men, at least don't feel great about themselves. Some of them feel outright horrible. And some of them take it very literally because, well, you said so. This is lip balm. This is, these are headphones. This is a thumb drive. This is a box of matches. This is a green hat. Women don't need men. Oh, okay. We will accept that. And then they will say, well, women don't need us. I'd like them, but they don't need us. And any logical thinking man or boy will say, well, if they don't need us and they don't want us in some instances, well, then what am I? I'm going to go play video games. And that's another thing, and is the adversarial relationship women have. And by the way, it's not only when you tell them, but when they see it. Their friends get shot down gruelingly, impolitely by women. Women constantly, articles being written about how they don't need, and you're oppressing them, and there's patriarchy, and you should feel shame, and we're all getting raped, and men are scum. I mean, actual misandry mixed in there, along with women don't need men. That is, what do I always say? It's women view men as their competitors at best, and their adversaries at worst. And so when you look at women, and I'd say 80% of the time, especially if you're in college and believe this feminist bullshit, you're the enemy. You're the bad guy. You're oppressing them without knowing because you have privilege. You just don't understand. Well, men, believe it or not, most of them, the good ones anyway, are going to respect your decision. And then they go away. They're like, well, they don't want us. They certainly don't like us. Well, maybe this girl will be my girlfriend on the internet. I can jerk off to her. And then they find agency and purpose playing video games. Because why are they going to put all that time and effort into working and getting a degree in engineering unless they are truly intellectually interested in that for themselves? They want a good job and a good career, and the parents kind of channeled them that way. And even then, we've had many clients on Asshole Consulting where, I majored in engineering, I'm a minimalist. One kid wasn't even, I don't even think it was above 25. He was sitting on $100,000, paid off his house. He's like, what do I do? I'm like, dude, travel. I guess eat really nice food, get some experiences in the rural. I mean, keep a line out for the women, but I wouldn't tell them you got that money, and look for a conservative or a traditional gal, or certainly not a leftist or a Marxist. Because they're not trained at your age to be looking to settle down. And as you may have noticed, they are your competitors at best, and likely your adversary. Oh, but I kind of would like to get married and have kids. That's not on the menu. It's not on the menu. You gotta go to a different restaurant for that. I don't know where, but so that's another disconnect, where you tell men they suck, you tell them they're not needed by women. Women can do everything. Women don't need no man, and that's the best. And then you tell them they're somehow implicitly guilty in the oppression of women, and then see some women hating you. That is a huge disincentive for men to do it. And then finally, millennials are now on the average age of 30. That's about the age, maybe even a little bit younger, where you realize you don't need that car. You don't need that fancy McMansion house. You're getting wise enough that you kind of realize what's BS, what's real, and what's not. And you're starting to make a little bit of money. You don't even have to be an engineer. You could just you're making your money. And the student loans, I think, have made a lot of millennials frugal. Although my data doesn't prove that. But they're kind of like, well, you know what? I'm okay with my bike. I'm okay taking public transportation. I'm okay with my 10-year-old Toyota Camry or some other reliable car. I'm okay making my 50 grand a year. And I'm okay going to the brew pub or going to these meetup groups or being online with my internet friends or playing video games at home. And they are certainly not going out and asking girls out. They go online, they might ask a girl, but online dating is almost completely worthless. And then they're like, I can get by on very little. I can survive. And if you come from not just a millennial male background, but any millennial, one might even say Gen X, but with the amount of debt that you've had, and the disadvantages, the uphill battle you have, especially if you were dumped into the Great Recession, as some of the older millennials were, you are really appreciative of those two lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, wow, it's great to have food. Every time I have a Subway, wow, Subway sandwich, it's great to have a $5 footlongs. I remember that came out. That was a godsend. You may just be happy surviving. You may just be happy, wow, I don't have to worry. You cherish stability. And then to take on a family, that's a big risk. I mean, I remember I had a vasectomy when I was 30 because I'm like, I barely got by. I'm not even rich now. I'm doing well. I have stability. That's what I cherish the most. But back then, if I had a kid, that would have been the torpedo that would have ran into my ship would have been bigger than the ship itself. If I had a kid I didn't want or couldn't afford. And so I got a vasectomy. And that made sure that I would skip and go keep up at the self-actualization. I never have to worry about, unless Ocasio-Cortez becomes president, like, we're taking all the money because I know better because I'm a rich little girl. Which she was. That secures that stability. And a lot of millennial boys, I think, are like, boys, young men, I can have this money and this food and clothing and shelter and never be poor again or have to bike out on a Schwinn in the middle of winter. Or I can risk it with this girl and get married and have kids. And I think I'm gonna which again provides further disincentive. And what was now a bartender or a barista who makes his $45,000 with tips and is perfectly happy, who could have maybe gone on to start a company, maybe been a corporate man, would have worked his way up to the top, maybe would have been a great accountant as she got her CPA. A lot of them, well, we're talking about the guys anyway, a lot of these boys are kind of like, nah, I don't need to work I don't want to work that much. A lot of them seem boomer bosses, which is an entire segment in my upcoming book about boomer bosses. Richly deserved. They're just going to stay there, man. Because this is the first time in their lives after they left the house, after the childhood, that there's been a semblance of happiness and stability, a semblance of freedom, a semblance of having fun. And they're not going to risk that. And so, again, not getting married, postpone, and no economic production. And so, you want to know, put a brief guess on how few men are going to become economically useful to the system and what that means all the way out to the macroeconomic, probably even geopolitical. So here's what the consequences are. It's just going to be a continuation of what's happening now. There will be lower and lower male participation rates. There'll be lower hours worked. You can look that up on the OECD. There will certainly be the potential, but men are not going to avail themselves of it. And it's another thing. Some of them might actually wake the fuck up and become conservative or simply not leftist and say, how much of my money goes away when I make 80 or 90,000? I'll just stay a barista, thank you very much. They're going to be that's going to continue to decline. And with less participation and less hours worked, you're going to have lower economic growth. And if you look at economic growth, on average, it has been going down. I'll say it again. In the evil 40s and 50s, where we all just oppressed women and beat up black people, Economic growth was 4.25%. Today we're excited at 2.25%. We almost have halved our economic growth. I believe it will continue to go down. I believe that'll happen. Now, just because there won't be any fit fathers in terms of finances or willing participants or husbands, that is not going to prevent women from wanting to have kids because their biology will scream at them. And you've seen it now already happening. You're going to see it increasing in crescendo, where there's going to be a big push for frozen eggs, freezing their eggs. And that is going to happen because women are being told to push their education for, you got to have a career, ignoring biology and ignoring this thing called menopause. And without a lot of willing participants or even quality candidates for being fathers and husbands, the women are, when they say they can't find a man in the dating, it is. I got a buddy who's a gal. She's a wonderful woman. Conservative, loves guns, loves shooting. She can't find a guy. She tells me these dates she goes, I'm like, this sounds horrible. I know we like to pick on the women here, but it's not exactly like this is a great selection. It's not like gals are getting the Sears catalog of men and like, oh, I'll take this one and this one, and it's bad. It's bad for the women out there too. But that's what they voted for. You told men you didn't want them, so don't be surprised there's nothing in the catalog of men. So women are not going to find good enough husbands, quality husbands. There just isn't enough. And there might have been. This isn't to say the guy living in his basement wouldn't have made a great father, he just had no incentive to. And so women will increasingly panic. They will resort to in vitro. They will resort to sometimes sperm jacking if they're a particularly amoral individual. But I think you're going to see a huge increase in demand for frozen eggs and in vitro and other associated related industry. Without the men there and women just having kids outside of nuclear families without a father around, you're going to see an increase in demand for government money and government programs to continue the supplantation, the replacement of men in the family. It's already happening. It's been happening since the Great Society in 1965. This will just increase it more. And you can see this with the percentage of births out of wedlock, although it has gone down. And bravo to the millennial gals and guys, it has gone down significantly. So I'm kind of like, it's still unacceptably high, but it's been checked. I'm kind of hoping that continues, but right now it's still unacceptable, 4 out of 10. So it's gonna, and as men are absent in women's lives, there are not enough quality men to make husbands and fathers. Women are going to increasingly go to find a surrogate man. And that will come in the form, as it always has for the past 40, 50 years, that is a government check, government programs, and now with the technology in vitro fertilization. You will see an increase in the size of the daycare babysitting operation. That runs from anything from actual, infant care, daycare, toddler care, to the public schools. You're going to see a lot, and let's be very clear, elementary education is nothing but a babysitting operation. You might learn something during the daytime, but you also see preschool, not pre in terms of like 4 and 3-year-olds, but I mean before school starts, like pre-8 a.m. programs and after school programs, before school programs, after school programs, because mommy got to work, and well, you can't afford it. You'll see women demand rights. It's not a right. It's a right is something that doesn't happen to you. You have the right not to get murdered. You have the right to not have anyone oppress your vote. You have the right to the road. You have a right to access health care. You don't have a right to health care. You don't have a right to having everybody pay for your shit. But that's what rights are under most people today, but especially women. And they're going to say, we should have a right to free child care. We should have a right to the taxpayer paying for us. Now, what's funny, it's two things, macroeconomic level. With less and less men working less and less, putting in less hours and doing less economically productive things, and women, if they continue, this is a key thing, if they continue majoring in stupid shit that doesn't generate real economic production, My perfect example is, well, I have to be a social worker and I have to drop my kids off at daycare. Why? So I can go work my social work job to raise other women's children who also have to drop their children off at daycare because they have to go and raise other women's children who also had to drop their children off at daycare because no women, I guess, want to raise their fucking kids. So they could go raise complete strangers' kids. If that doesn't, because that doesn't produce shit. Teachers. I'm going to be a teacher. Why? To teach future teachers. Why? So they can teach future teachers. There's no economic production. So I'm all for getting women into STEM and the trades and producing genuine economic production because we need that shit to not only live, but that's what you actually tax so that you can fund all these programs and, for childcare. And essentially, the men are not going to be the fathers or the husbands. So we need big government programs to pay for somebody or a surrogate for the state to supplant men totally. And that means economic production has to come from somewhere. I do not predict men will also rise up to the occasion and work more. They're going to continue to be disincentivized to work low-level economic jobs and to work less. So they're not going to be taxed as much. A lot of guys complain that women and it's somewhat true, men pay taxes and women consume the taxes. That's more true than it is not. But when men go galt and they're just not working as much, there's not going to be the tax base there. Women are not producing any real economic production. You just go in, spend this money to spend it, but there's no actual production there. So they're not going to, and I predict also women are not going to all of a sudden major in STEM and engineering. I just don't see it. Women are going to continue at roughly 66, 2/3 the rate, major in worthless crap. Well, I'm sorry, no, that's all people. 2/3 of the worst, maybe it is 2/3. But women's majority major in stupid shit. That's not going to produce the economic production we need to pay for the shit that they want. So with men not working and not paying the taxes, and women consuming taxes, whatever it is they might have generated because they're working for the government, but then they consume government taxes, so there's no economic production. We're going to have to spend deficit. We're going to have deficit spending. And what that will do is increase deficits. And here's where it happens geopolitically. Right now, because we have nuclear weapons, we're really abbreviating this one. Right now, because we have nuclear weapons, we're the world's largest economy. And we're a relatively uncorrupt economy compared to our next competitors, which are China and Russia and Brazil and India. We are going to remain the world's reserve currency, and the US dollar will have value. And until another large economy or group of economies, like say the euro perhaps, but they're in worse shape than the United States, comes along and is not as corrupt and have better economic fundamentals, thereby making their currency more valuable, the United States dollar will remain the world's reserve currency. And we will continue, because we've been getting away with this for quite some time now, ever since basically Clinton. We had surpluses for a little bit there. Our finances got great, but then we just printed off more money with Bush and the war and all that other crap. Obama just blew it out of the water. We will be able to continue this facade because our relative uncorruption and our still large economy and our large military will ensure the US dollar has value relative to any other competitors. So the rest of the world is just going to suck our dick and keep consuming our dollars whether they want to or not. The time will come, though, when the economic production is not there, and there will be a better kid on the block, and people are going to prefer yuan or rupees or the Brazilian real or Russian, whatever. It could be a group, or the euro. Who knows? Europe might get its act together. And then all of a sudden, those dollars will not just be consumed by the rest of the globe. They're going to stay in the United States because nobody wants them. And that's going to inflate the fuck out of shit. We've already seen this to a little bit on some of the key personal budget items: housing, tuition, healthcare, cars, rent. There has been, I wouldn't say hyperinflation, but definitely significant inflation in the U.S. market, but we don't really care about that. We care what the price of a gallon of milk is. And then we bitch and whine that gas went up a nickel. Meanwhile, your rent went up $100 a month, but I don't expect people to have that much intelligence. Larger point is, as long as we can keep that up, we can essentially replace men with a government for a temporary amount of time until that system collapses, until the world reserve currency collapses. But when that does happen, yeah, then all the dollars will come. Not only the dollars we print off, but the rest of the world is going to be trying to unload their dollars. And guess where dollars can only be spent? Here in the U.S. So all of that foreign dollars is going to come back on our shore and have a lot of inflation. And then women, I can't find a man. Why is everything so expensive? It's Trump's fault. Yeah. And then you're going to have a really bad economic recession. I don't know if it'd be a crash, but it's going to be really bad. A really bad economic recession. And and then it depends on how much we want to lie to each other about what is the nature of economic production. Can men just sit there? Will women make up and compensate for the lack of men? It could happen. It could happen where what is it? Is it Brazil or was it Puerto Rico? Brazil is Portuguese, but a Latin American country somewhere. I know Puerto Rico isn't a part of the United States. I know that. There is a Latin community somewhere where basically the welfare state is so huge the men are like, fuck it. And the women do all the quasi work, and it's just welfare recipient. I mean, I forgot. Maybe that's all of them. I don't know. But the women are the ones working. You see this in some Southern European countries where the men are like, fuck it, ain't worth working, and they're just 37 years old and they live at home with mom in Italy. Southern Italy, Spain, that kind of stuff. I think that will happen because I think the indoctrination and young women's gullibility to believe it. They've proven they'll believe the feminists lie all the time, that they got to go and work and they don't need no man, fish, bicycle. They will continue to remove the fuel from the economy. It will not inspire men. Popeye will get no spinach. And they'll just keep limping along. The only true advancements will come from technological advances and not anybody working harder or smarter or being inspired by love or beauty or sex or family formation or the love of your children. Yeah. And that's what I think geopolitically will happen, And God Almighty, we have a couple Muslim listeners here too. Well, maybe they're not Muslim, but they're from the Middle East, and they're talking about how feminism is spreading all over the place, and telling women that being female is dumb and not needed, and men are the same standard rigmarole, and they're killing the fuel that has otherwise inspired men to be men and produce stuff. You see that happening a lot in India. Our Kuwaiti agent in the field, among other Middle Eastern agents in the field, is like, dude, this feminism shit. That's happening in Europe, obviously. Sweden is going to. And it's also happening in Mexico. I was talking to Anthony, like, oh, yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And so I don't know if the U.S., if the rest of the world succumbs to this removal of the global fuel of economic growth in the form of female beauty, I don't know if the U.S. would ever really lose this second, because currencies is relative to all other currencies. And if everyone's just like shooting themselves in the foot and removing the fuel rods from their economy, all economies are going to slow. We're all going to have more debts. All economies are going to look like a non-profit teacher, guidance counselor, social worker, and there'll be like this much of actual tradesmen and engineers and programmers and doctors doing this shit and farmers. It'll just be a big masturbatory pie chart of economic production where like 80% of it is bullshit and make work government jobs to feel good, and there's only like 20% actual production. But the technology will be so advanced that 20% of production will limp the economies along. But there'll be no greatness. There'll be no booming economy. There will be no national pride or let's take a country everyone, Poland, everybody likes Poland. There'll be no Polish. Yeah, look at what the Poles did. They created the something widget machinery that revolutionized the Poles are really good at producing that stuff. There just won't be anything like that. It'll just be men going gulp, living at home, drinking their vino, and saying, fuck it. That's what it'll be. So there you go. All right, questions, answers, AstroConsulting.com. Check out all my cool stuff down below, intellectual, philosophical stuff like that. Books, podcast, links, things, and stuff. And we'll see you guys later. Toodles.